Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the October 15, 2012 Board of Commissioners meeting for Currituck County, and I appreciate you turning out in face of the impending storm. And I'm going to drag the meeting out long enough that the storm will be gone by the time y'all are ready to leave. But anyway, we want to start the meeting off tonight with the invocation and Pledge of Allegiance by Reverend Dennis Crehan. If you'd come up and lead the congregation in invocation and then pledge. Thank you.
Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day, and we give you glory for it, dear God, because you're the creator of life, you're the sustainer of life, and most importantly, you're the giver of eternal life. But Lord, Scripture says every good and perfect gift comes down from the Father above. And we praise you for that, dear God. We can live in a free land. We can live in a land that your grace and mercy has been bestowed upon. And that was true because we were obedient and we followed your will and followed your way. And Lord, I pray that as we approach this election season, that we would get back to those core founding principles, that God is God and he knows best. So Lord, I just pray for this meeting tonight. I pray that your will be done. I pray you bless the commissioners. I pray for every person here, dear God, that they would just seek your wisdom and that they would follow your guidance, that you could bless them and bless us, dear God. We need it tremendously. So we thank you for this night. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen.
Okay, next we have approval of the agenda, and I've got an item to add to the consent agenda, a resolution to apply for certain state and federal grant funding, and I think we always like to apply for grant funding. And okay, and I'd like to make one adjustment to the schedule, which really isn't an agenda change, but we have it under the administrative reports, which is following the public hearings. Ms. Courtney's here to make a presentation on National Alzheimer's Disease and National Family Caregiver Awareness Month, and I'd like to move that up in front of the public hearing so we don't hold them up for the...
I will amend my approval to accommodate that.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Opposed? Good. All right. That'll change the schedule for us and move things along, hopefully. And the next item I have on the agenda then is public comment, and Ms. Barbara Snowden is here. She had an agenda item last meeting on a Civil War poster project, and she's here tonight, so we like to hear what she has to say about this project.
Thank you, Chairman, County Commissioners. We are here to present the Civil War poster for Currituck County. As you know, to commemorate the Civil War, we have been having a number of lectures, about 10 of them, for the last 2 years. The Civil War lasted through... was going to last for 3 more years. And we wanted to have some kind of permanent or something that physically people could look at and could commemorate the Civil War. And we came up with a poster that we hope you will like, and we want to present it to you tonight. I have with me Janet Sawyer, who is Vice President of the Currituck County Historical Society, Monica Bass, who is our treasurer, and Sandra Justice, who is representing our Civil War Committee. The poster came about in a kind of odd way. When you start researching, you look at books and you find something that looks interesting. A man by the name of Mr. Swain had a book called The Long Roll, and as I was reading it, it had some pictures that said Sketches of Currituck County. They were very small, and you could not figure out what they were. You could, but it took a magnifying glass. I then, with some help from the other members of the Currituck County Historical Society, said, okay, if these are actual sketches of Currituck County that were done during the Civil War, wouldn't it be very good to have them here in the county? Luckily, some other members helped me, and we were able to locate the sketches in Duluth, Minnesota, of all places. They would not loan us the sketches, even though we asked very seriously, but they said, we will give you permission to make a copy of them. They will give us a high resolution scan, and you may copy it this one time. So when we do this poster, as much as I'd like to put these pictures all over everywhere, we have permission to do the poster. And so at this time, I would like Janet to unveil the poster so you could see it, and I'll explain a little bit what it is. The poster says the 150th anniversary of the Civil War in Currituck County. And if you will look at the very top, it says Charles F. Johnson, Sketches of Currituck, 1862. The reason we waited till this time to do the actual presentation is because these sketches actually were done in 1862. The first sketch is looking from the water to the Simmons Granberry House, and behind the shoulder of the house you can see Currituck County Courthouse in 1862. The next sketch is of a windmill. Now, it just says Currituck Windmill, and I don't know where it is because we know that there was a windmill on Bell's Island, there was a windmill on Tulls Creek, and there was a windmill on Knott's Island that we can document. The third photograph says Fresh Land Point, and there, again, we're not really sure exactly where this is. There is a body of water by this name in the Washwoods up near Virginia line. As you go down, you will see pictures of the canal. You will see boats on the Sound. You will see a boat from Edenton. You see a whole number of boats. In the center is a picture of a canal, and the gentleman named it Currituck Canal. As a historian, I have to tell you that I think he was mistaken. During this particular campaign, twice supplies were sent down through the canal. One time, the Army went through one canal and the supplies went to the other canal. The second time they went to the Battle of South Mill, the Army went down one canal and the supplies went down the other canal. So I think the Northern Army was having just a little bit of trouble figuring out which canal. The reason we think the center canal may be the Dismal Swamp Canal instead of Coinjock is, if you will notice, there is a towpath and the boat is being pulled. And I cannot find in any of the records of the Albemarle and Chesapeake Canal that there was a towpath in that particular document. And then the final document, or the final photograph, is not even in Currituck, but it was included in the sketches, and it is sketching of the burning of the salt works at Princess Anne in Virginia. Now, that doesn't bother me a bit because we can prove at least 4 different times Union soldiers came to Currituck to burn salt works, and the Confederate government said that one of their main sources of salt was Currituck County. And so we know that there were salt works up and down the Currituck Outer Banks, on Knott's Island and other places here in the county. And then down at the very bottom, in the artist's hand, it just says very simply, General Sketches of Currituck Canal, and then the date 1862. Now, how did it end up in Duluth, Minnesota? Mr. Johnson, in 1870, after the war was over, he was a member of the 9th New York Regiment. He and his wife moved to Duluth, where he started a printing business. He wrote his memoirs, which were not published till after his death. He went on to be a customs collector for the town of Duluth, Minnesota, and a very active person politically. We are very lucky to have, one, permission from the University of Minnesota at Duluth to allow us to copy this, and two, we're very proud of the fact that the people in the county were the ones who found this and were able to bring it to fruition. We are hoping that I'm not going to make Dan commit any money tonight, but we are hoping we're giving you a framed copy of this poster. There is a smaller version. You can't read it as well, but there is a smaller version. We are hoping to see that smaller version in every county office in the county. We're hoping to see it in every business in Currituck County. as a physical reminder of the 150th or the sesquicentennial of the Civil War. You may obtain your posters through the Chamber of Commerce. If you're a business, there's a special deal for you, or you can get it from any member of the Currituck County Historical Society. Now, I will put a plug. The big poster is $20. The small poster is only $10. And we would like to see them all over the county so people can remember the Civil War, and we will have a physical reminder that Currituck County has done something to commemorate the 150th anniversary of the Civil War. Are there any questions?
I would think that, the county should provide all the commissioners with a copy of that. Don't you think it would be? And maybe one in the libraries? And
There is one. We have given one to the library, and we're giving the county one. I'm afraid all other people have to buy them, including myself. I had to buy my own copy.
we'll talk to Dan for you.
Okay. Any questions?
Is any of the social study classes or teachers, have they been
I have
notified?
contacted Allison, or I've contacted the superintendent and asked that that we provide at least 10 copies of the poster so there can be one in each of the schools. And like you, I would like to see it actually in the social studies classrooms so that the students can see it. I may be a little weird, and I know that, but I get goosebumps when I think about this guy was here in Currituck 150 years ago fighting a war, and that he's making these sketches so that we know what Currituck looked like 150 years later.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
All right.
Ms. Snowden,
Yes.
I compliment you, but maybe I don't know if somebody can answer a question. Is the war between the states taught in Currituck County schools?
Yes, sir, depending on the title. And I know we can get into an argument or not a discussion of that. But yes, the Civil War is part of the curriculum. It is mentioned in the 8th grade and especially in the 11th grade U.S. history class.
I thought the appropriate name was the War of Northern Aggression.
I understand that.
Being civil about it.
I'm trying to be a little bit diplomatic and not say the War of Southern Aggression or the Civil War or the war between the states. I'm going to call it the Civil War because the Civil War, by definition, means you have a war within the boundaries of a country. And I don't think anybody can disagree that we had a war that was within the boundaries of a country.
Well, I found it interesting, I think, from one of those history lectures, too, that if you asked the typical Currituckian back at the time, which side were you for, it depended on who was asking the question.
That is true. We're finding a lot of documentation of people who were living and trying to make a living here in Currituck County. And to make a living, they had to work with the Union Army. And they had to have passes that would allow them to take their product to Norfolk. And so we are finding what we thought was maybe one pass or two passes, we're finding a number of passes. And to give you the other side, there were a number of skirmishes that were fought here in this area. The closest major battle is the Battle of South Mills, and Mr. Johnson was part of the Battle of South Mills. We had a skirmish at Indiantown. We had a skirmish up in Mayock. We had the burning of the salt works up and down at least 3 places on the Outer Banks. We had General Shaw, who Shawborough is named after, being the commander during the Battle of Roanoke Island. And we have had a number of conflicts that happened within our borders. And the reason that made us so important, and I don't want to be the history teacher again with you, but the reason that made us so important is that sound, because that was our waterway. And the Union Army found that they could not supply the blockade if they had not controlled our area. And so they had to, very early in the war, 1862, get control of northeastern North Carolina so that they could maintain the blockade. And I know that you're going to talk about the Albemarle-Chesapeake Canal a little bit later on your agenda. That was one of their major objectives, both for the Confederate and for the North, or for the Yankees. So that was a very, very important place to control.
We appreciate all your efforts to make history not only educational but also entertaining.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Who wants to go first?
I attended the Ghost Walk over in Elizabeth City this past Friday and Saturday night, and their theme this year was Elizabeth City after the Battle of Roanoke Island and then the non-battle for the capture of Elizabeth City. And they did a very good job, I think, historically interpreting it. They had a character played General Wild, one-armed general who terrorized the Southern people. But they constantly referred to Currituck County and the little spiels that they put forward about how important Currituck was. And I found it very interesting and also very entertaining. And maybe that's something we ought to look at doing, something to reenact the history with local people so our kids can understand it.
Can understand it and realize the importance of Currituck County. My husband reminds me that I will get in trouble when anybody calls me a Currituck native. I am not a Currituck native. I was born in the Piedmont and came down here a number of years ago to teach. Ended up marrying and living here the rest of my life. But I think that's one of the things that sometimes living in an area opposed to coming into an area, you don't realize the history that you have. And I think a lot of people who have come into the area are amazed at the history of Currituck, the place that Currituck played in North Carolina history and in Albemarle history. And I am very proud of all the things that Currituck has done to make this an outstanding historical place to live. And I will tell you, even though I sometimes get frustrated not having all the resources I need, it is a wonderful place to do research, especially in the colonial and early history of this county.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. Appreciate you being here this evening. Okay, the next item, we move the presentation under administrative reports by the Currituck County Joint Community Advisory Committee, proclamation for National Alzheimer's Disease and National Family Caregiver Awareness Month, up to this point on the agenda so that y'all will not have to wait through the public hearing. So, Ms. Courtney?
Good evening. I want to thank you very much for having us tonight. I'd like to talk a little bit about Alzheimer's and some of the statistics. As you know, I'm a historian, but I'm also into statistics, so it will be quick. What we have done is to ask Currituck County to join with us to recognize the National Alzheimer's Disease Awareness and Family Caregiver Month. It begins on November 1st and ends on November 30th. To provide a little bit of the background why we feel this is so important, and maybe I should go and say who we, I keep saying we, it's the committee from Currituck County that is, we have a name here that's just, it's the Currituck County Joint Community Advisory Committee. And we work with the nursing homes in our county, and we see what's going on out there when it comes to Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease is a progressive degenerative disease that causes brain deterioration in memory and thinking, as well as judgment and reasoning ability. It also affects behavior, emotions, and the ability to perform self-care. National research has shown that there are over 5 million Americans in the United States that are living with this disease, and additionally, 1,252 Americans are diagnosed daily. According to the National Institute on Aging, the total amount of national cost per year for Alzheimer's care is estimated to be over $100 billion, dollars, and that covers diagnosis, extended care, and family caregiver illness. According to the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, it is estimated that 570,000 older adults, this is in North Carolina, have Alzheimer's or some other form of dementia. It is the 6th leading cause of death for people of all ages and the 5th leading cause for disease for people over 65, or for death for over 65. It is estimated that for every individual with Alzheimer's disease, up to 4 family members act as caregivers. And their caregiving on the average runs 8 years and sometimes extends as long as 20 years. More than 70% of people with Alzheimer's disease live at home and are cared for by family and friends. And I'm sure we each know someone who's doing that in our county. Using the 2010 census in Currituck County, it is estimated that we have 424 persons with Alzheimer's disease, involving over 1,700 caregivers. This is in Currituck County alone. We want to thank the county for their recognition of individuals, families, and friends, and caregivers dealing with this devastating effect of Alzheimer's. The researchers are seeking a cause and a cure, and education and support services are provided by the North Carolina organizations and the Area Agency on Aging. We thank the commissioners for their proclamation designating November 2012 as Alzheimer's Disease Awareness Month in Currituck, and to make this declaration available to all of its citizens. I'd like to read a short poem by W. Scott Waterhouse. The meaning of my life. If I've helped a stranger, then my life has had meaning. If I've given hope to a friend, then my life has had meaning. If I saved one lost soul, then my life has had meaning. If my laughter has lifted the spirit of another, then my life has had meaning. If my life can save someone else, then my life has had true meaning. Our committee has put together for the first time in Currituck a candlelight reflection for the Alzheimer Awareness Month. This is not a fundraising event. It is going to be on Thursday, November 1st at 6 p.m. at the Currituck Senior Center on Community Way in Barco. It is to honor, hope, and remember those past and present and their caregivers. I would ask anyone who's planning to come to please call the Senior Center at 232-3505 and tell them that you're coming. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Courtney.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to comment on that. My grandmother died from Alzheimer's. It's a very cruel. Yeah, it's a very cruel. I mean, to just see somebody that was vibrant mentally, and then all of a sudden it just goes very quickly, and it's a long, slow, drawn out an affair. And the people that are dealing with loved ones that have that, they truly, physically, the person may seem perfectly fine, and they just mentally, I mean, it's just a horrible disease, and anyone that has ever had a family member or knows someone, we certainly should uplift them and volunteer and help any of those people that we do know at any time, because the caregivers need a break as well. The toll it takes on the caregivers is just, it ages them tremendously too. It's just a lot of people are dealing with it, and you don't see it because physically they look fine. So,
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say I appreciate you bringing that forward.
My mother-in-law died of Alzheimer's, and I know it's very cruel. On November the 1st at the senior center, you want people to come out with a candle.
We have candles.
You've got candles. So you just need bodies to hold the candles.
Right.
So we're all going to stand in the parking lot and pray.
It's the courtyard between the senior center and the extension building. The beautiful area that's got the wall, the sitting wall
Yes, ma'am.
will be there. And Providence Baptist Church, the youth choir, will also be there to sing some songs.
You're just looking for people, you've got the candles.
Well, yes, we have the candles and the blue lapel ribbons.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a resolution that's been prepared here, which we would need to adopt for my signature. And I'm going to read the opening and close of it, because Ms. Courtney's already given us most of the meat of it. But it essentially says, whereas Currituck, North Carolina joins in recognizing National Alzheimer's Disease Awareness and Family Caregiver Month beginning November 1st, 2012 through November 30th, 2012. And then the information that she provided about the statistics and so on. Whereas the County of Currituck recognizes individuals, families, friends, and caregivers dealing with the devastating effects of Alzheimer's disease, researchers who are seeking a cause or causes and cure, and the educational programs and support services provided by North Carolina Alzheimer's organizations and the Area Agency on Aging. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Currituck County Board of Commissioners do hereby proclaim November 2012 as Alzheimer's Disease Awareness Month in Currituck, North Carolina, and commit its observance to all citizens, to be adopted this day. So, hearing no objection to that, I would go ahead and move that we make this resolution an act of the Board of Commissioners tonight.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, very good. Thank you. I'll watch these microphones. All right, so we'll move on now to the business at hand. Thank you, ladies, for coming tonight. Have a safe trip back home. First item, public hearing and action, PB 12-19, Barry Nelms. Request to amend the new Unified Development Ordinance, Chapter 5, Development Standards, to allow off-premise directional signs for properties located adjacent to the Currituck Sound. Mr. Woody.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an amendment to the new Unified Development Ordinance, which becomes effective January 1st of 2013. And what this does is it's proposed by Mr. Nelms, and it's asked to expand upon a previous amendment heard by this board. And what it does is it allows one off-premise directional signage for a business located adjoining the Currituck Sound. Several meetings ago, earlier this year, the UDO was amended initially to allow an off-premise directional signage for a business located adjacent to the Atlantic Intracoastal Waterway. That amendment was adopted, and what this does, the proposal before you tonight expands upon that, and it basically clarifies that the amendment would be broadened to include properties adjacent to the Currituck Sound. Now, the key part of this is you have to have a business that's located next to one of these water bodies, and if you do, you can locate a directional sign on another piece of property under the same ownership. Now, I do want to note a couple of clarifying things about the language before you tonight. Should you choose to adopt this, first of all, the language in the text amendment says adjacent to the Intercoastal Waterway. In Currituck Sound, what that should say is adjoining the Intercoastal Waterway and Currituck Sound. Adjoining means that the business property physically touches one of these water bodies. That's an important distinction. So I would ask the board, if you adopt this, to include the word adjoining. And additionally, it needs to be clarified to say that it's the Intracoastal Waterway or the Currituck Sound. The intent of the amendment is to build upon the first one and say that if your business is located on the Intercoastal Waterway or the Currituck Sound, you would be eligible for this off-premise directional sign if the board approves this amendment. So I just wanted to clarify that language. We heard this previously, staff. We have the same recommendation as the last case. We are recommending denial of this request principally for two reasons. One is it's not consistent with the land use plan, and I want to read the policy statement from the land use plan. Policy CA5 of our adopted plan says that an attractive, less commercialized landscape, particularly along heavily traveled land and water routes, is essential to the tourist-based economy of the area. The placement of additional billboards and off-site advertising signs shall not be permitted in Currituck County. We feel this amendment is not consistent with that policy. And additionally, we're also concerned that approving this amendment would only strengthen the precedent to allow additional off-premise directional signs in the county. The Planning Board heard this request at their September meeting, and they recommended denial of the request. Planning Board gave reasons that it would increase the potential impact of the number of businesses on the Currituck Sound that would have access to this type of signage versus the impact of the number of businesses on the Intercoastal Waterway. And the Planning Board also stated that this request was inconsistent with the land use plan. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Well, I had an observation. I'm going to ask Mr. McCree to comment on it, too. When I look at the map of the Intracoastal Waterway, the Atlantic Intracoastal Waterway, as far as it's adjacent to Currituck County, starts at the Virginia line and goes all the way past the tip of Point Harbor, because it, in fact, comes all the way down the Northwest River, across the Coinjock Cut, down North River into Albemarle Sound. And this would, based on the ordinance as it's drafted, appear to allow businesses that are located anywhere along there to, in fact, have this directional signage. And Mr. McCree, I think, had some other observations about the language of it that I think would lead us to believe that maybe we need to revisit the drafting of the ordinance generally. If he
Well, I think Mr. Woody brought to your attention some of the language that really needs to be amended or corrected even from the original adoption of this particular provision. That, again, is changing the word adjacent to the word adjoining. Adjacent is not defined by the UDO, but taking the common ordinarily understood definition, that could be a business that is near to the Atlantic Intercoastal Waterway and Currituck Sound. The next issue is, again, whether the intention of the board is really to make a business that's located adjoining the Coinjock Canal as opposed to the Intercoastal Waterway itself. And then, as Mr. Woody pointed out, the word "and" probably really should be or needs to be "or," if this really is to have some kind of meaning or applicability to businesses in the county, because the way it's currently drafted, it would arguably mean that someone would have to have a business located both on the Intercoastal Waterway and the Currituck Sound in order to be able to take advantage of this particular ordinance.
Which would preclude, really, the Coinjock Canal.
Yes.
Anybody else have any comments or questions about?
Yes, Mr. Woody. Several months ago, we heard a request from Krabby's Restaurant, which has a sign, and it has been allowed, I guess, for 8, 10, 12 years, and he wanted to enlarge it. And so I think the board at that time, we said, okay, you can enlarge it. But subsequently, DOT has decided they would not allow the enlargement of the sign, and so it has been denied by DOT, therefore makes mute everything that we did at that meeting several months ago. And
Mr. Chairman, I ask a question. Whatever we adopt, the UDO doesn't go into place until January, right?
It's the UDO is mandatory for everybody in January. However, at this time, applicants do have the option of choosing the old or the new UDO.
Would it be too much to ask to continue this or maybe remand this back to the planning board to let them look at it and understand that Mr. Nelms wasn't there and maybe the proper procedures weren't followed? To me, this is and Commissioner Odlett brought it up that night that, what he said is coming to fruition. This thing could turn into a bag of worms that I feel like that we as a board or the planning board needs to look at a little further rather than make a decision on something tonight. Is that something that we can do?
I believe you have the discretion to do that if the board would want to.
I'd like to make a motion that we remand this back to.
I want to hear from the applicant.
Okay,
before we
I'm sorry.
move on to that.
Well, I'd like to ask a question before we get too far down the road here. Okay, you have a business such as Mr. Nelms that's sitting back on the Currituck Sound. What kind of signage is he allowed to have currently?
He's allowed to have an on-premise sign, so that'd be signage located on his business site. And that can be up to, depending on the road front, is between 128 and 160 square feet in size.
Okay, so that would be like me selling marbles out of my house and putting a sign in the living room. Nobody would know that it's there unless there's some type of directional signage. What I'm seeing is that we had the issue with Krabby's and Midway Marina, and now this has come up as well, that the board, if we're going to look at this, it needs to look at it comprehensively. And I think that's what Mr. Petrie has said he'd like to see. But if I'm not sure I'm getting where I'm trying to go here. I can have a business right here on this highway. I got a sign, everybody can see it. But if I'm off the highway, I can't even put a directional sign showing where I'm at. But yet, like the rural center, the county has a sign showing where the rural center is because we want people to go there. And I'm not sure what the answer is. I want to see a proliferation of signs every square foot of the county, but I do think that having what Mr. Rorer has talked about with the Intercoastal Waterway and the Currituck Sound, and you know how it's going to meld all together, I certainly think that the board is going to have to take a comprehensive look at this issue versus every time somebody comes forward, you look at, we're going to do this one, and then the next one, and I think that's where we were, where you and Mr. Petrie were going with that. And so I just think that this needs to be done in a way that makes sense, that satisfies the needs of the business, but also helps with what's perceived as clutter on the corridor. But
I would make only one comment. Some of the shops in Corolla sit on Currituck Sound, and therefore they could have signage if we don't look how this is written. And
that's my
just
point.
an observation that, you know, it's
You could
it
say the
probably
west side
goes
of the
someplace
Sound.
else with this.
You know, and any new businesses, for instance, on the west side of the mainland peninsula, all the way down to Point Harbor. If
Absolutely.
somebody were to open a marina, like they were planning to do at Fisher's Landing with a restaurant, could then put a sign out on the highway.
well,
Mr. Chairman,
businesses got to survive, folks. I mean,
I'd like to make a piggyback to comment on what Commissioner O'Neill just said. Keep in mind the land use plan was adopted in 2006, before we experienced the economic downturn that we're in now. And based on who you're listening to, maybe could rear its head again next year. I don't think Mr. Nelms would be here asking for this tonight if he didn't see it would benefit his business and helping him survive this recession we're in. So I want, maybe we need to go in and amend the land use plan at the same time and look at that, because, it's contrary to the conditions that we're living in today when it was adopted.
And I think there are some limitations in place. Mr. Woody alluded to the fact that DOT has some regulations in place regarding this as well. And I think they have requirements pretty similar to ours in that you have to have common ownership of the land if you'd put a directional sign on the highway with the business.
Bottom line, we're here to help our people.
Exactly.
And if DOT blocks it, we're doing everything we can to help them.
Right, but there's some restrictions that I think we feel probably need to be applied, including the west side of the Outer Banks, because, we have more stringent requirements over there.
Well, we can certainly exclude the Outer Banks from this
Yeah.
amendment.
Right,
and
but it
just
was
say
not in the way it
applies
was
only to the
originally worded.
mainland of
Okay.
Currituck.
So I think Mr. Petrie's recommendation probably is pretty much along what I'm hearing we think needs to be done, is we need to send this back to the drawing board.
I think the applicant needs to.
Right, I want to hear his impression as well.
Chance to-
Mr. Nelms, if you'd like to come up and give us your comments on this as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would simply like the opportunity that I paid $150 to come here for, to have my public hearing and to answer questions that were just brought up by you. I've done extensive research on this. I have some valuable information that you have in the packet in front of you, and I agree with most of what you've said, that it needs to be done. Mr. Etheridge and I are probably the only two on this in this meeting, I started to say on this board, that remember back in the mid-'80s, the same issue came up with, you probably remember her name, Owen, a young lady that had a business on the railroad tracks. To me, it was a gift shop or something like that, and she came to the Board of Commissioners. Wilson Snowden was the chairman, and I was the vice chairman then. And she wanted a sign out on Shawboro Road to do the same thing that Mr. Miles wanted, the same thing that I wanted, and the same thing that the county does. I remember when we had a big issue about getting the library sign out on 158 to show them where the library was in Moyock. But they have that, because a directional sign is critically important. It's critically important to my business. You know, we've lost 11 restaurants at the south end of the county in the last 5 years. 11. We lost 2 in the last month at Moyock, and you're going to lose more. And that's not because of us not trying to do a good job. Don and I just talked to our travel and tourism department, and we were talking to them about the bridge. And I was so despondent because I know all the efforts that all of y'all did to go to try and get that. And we were telling her that we're noticing that the vast majority of the people coming in Walnut Island Restaurant are new people and have been for the last 2 years. And travel and tourism says you're exactly right, because they're not coming back. And they're not coming back because they're sitting in traffic for 3 to 4 hours to get across the Wright Memorial Bridge, and then they're sitting in traffic for 2.5 hours to get out on Saturday and Sunday mornings, and they're so mad when they get out of here that they're not going to stop. And if you don't have a directional sign like I don't have, and you're going to be surprised, there aren't but 3 of us that would qualify that don't have one. Myself and Pearls and Mike Diana's over in Corolla. And he's not on Currituck Sound. He's on the marsh there. And he's regulated by the, Homeowners Association they have. And the only other one is the inn at Corolla. And it doesn't qualify because it's on NC-12. And I've got the map, or you have a copy of the maps that show there are but 6 businesses that this would apply to. And you would help out 6 businesses. Because I'm going to tell you, I've been in this business for 35 years in this county. I was in it 8 years in Virginia Beach before I moved here. And if things don't change in the next 4 years, you're going to be eating at McDonald's, Sonic, or Hardee's in Currituck County. That's going to happen. And I need the same opportunity for help that you gave Mr. Miles. I'm sorry Mr. Miles fell on problems with DOT, but in my dissertation, in my presentation, I'd like to give you the history of the signs that I had since 1986. And I dealt with DOT too, and they took one away from me, and they took my directional sign away from me. And I would like to have the public hearing. I think I deserve that right. Thank you.
So where do we proceed from here? You have given us what the ordinance says and what the recommendation, or at least the proposed amendment to it says. And does anybody have any questions for Mr. Nelms or Mr. Woody or Mr. McCree?
Does Mr. Nelms have, Mr. Nelms, do you have some slides you want to show? Is that, or you want to do a presentation?
4 that are in my presentation.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, that's really what I asked to come up for, because we'll open the public hearing in that case and let you go ahead and make what presentation you'd like to do for that. I'm sorry.
That's what I would
Yeah.
like to have.
Okay, well, I intended to do that all along anyway. I'm trying to get a vein of where they were trying to go with comments from Mr. Woody. So go ahead and proceed by all means.
I think for the record, Mr. Chairman, just to make clear that you are opening the public
Okay,
hearing for this
I'm
matter.
opening the public hearing, so Mr. Nelms can do his presentation for that. No, it's sworn in, for not
No
special use.
swearing, no swearing tonight, not yet.
I don't get to swear.
No swearing yet.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for your attention, and I appreciate this opportunity. I'd like to give you a little bit of the history, first of all, of my property. I purchased the property in 1985. I took it over and sealed the deal in 1986. At that time, I purchased the restaurant, the motel, the marina, and a sign, a directional sign at the intersection of Walnut Island Boulevard and US 158. Soon thereafter, about 18 months to 2 years, I'm guessing, I don't know the exact date, DOT advised me that I had to move the sign because they took over Walnut Island Boulevard. At the time I bought the property, it was not under state domain. So they took over Walnut Island Boulevard and some other signs in Walnut Island. I contacted Miss Alethea Baum, who owned the property right across from where the sign was on Walnut Island Boulevard. And I moved my sign from the median to Miss Alethea's problem. Paul remembers Miss Alethea, I know. And that sign stayed there for about 4 or 5 years. Miss Alethea sold the property to Bodie Noel, who put in a Scats-Through restaurant, which later developed into a Hardee's restaurant, and is still there. When she sold that property, she tried to get the property subdivided, which was impossible to do, so that I could keep my sign at least on the back side of that property. That didn't work. So I then went to Dr. Sarah Forbes, who owned the property across the street, and I moved my sign from Miss Alethea Baum's property to Dr. Sarah Forbes' property, and that, for those of you that don't know her, is where the Exxon station, Handy Hugo's, is now. I had the sign there for approximately, I guess, 4 years maybe, and I paid her monthly. She had an office in Duck, and I went there, and she was a delightful person to do business with. And then she sold the property. So I got a notice to remove my sign within 15 days because the new landowners demanded that I take the sign down. So I took the sign down, and for approximately 16 months, I had no sign. I then went to DOT in Elizabeth City, and I petitioned them to let me put a sign back up in the median. And they agreed to do that for me. And I put the sign up. Matter of fact, the logo that's on there now with the 3 canvasback geese on it, I made. And I put that sign up, and I paid the state of North Carolina for 14 years. I had that sign there. Then there became an issue with Barry Nelms and the Walnut Island Property Owners Association and a woman named Joyce. And I come by one Saturday morning and I see my sign tore down, laying in the parking lot at 7-Eleven. And I went berserk. And a nice county officer came up and he told me they had permission to tear my sign down. I couldn't believe it, but he was telling me the truth. What had happened was the Property Owners Association went to DOT, told them that they wanted to erect a new subdivision sign, which is there now, and they wanted permission to tear it down. Well, DOT can't give them permission to tear my sign down, but they did. So the sign was tore down, and the new Walnut Island sign for the subdivision is there, and I haven't had a directional sign in Grandy ever since. I've been forced to, not forced, but I chose a few years back because my business, like Mr. Miles and everybody else that's in the restaurant business in the county, has been declining over the last 4, 5, 6 years, whatever. It's not been what it used to be. We don't have a big hotel here. I've got probably the nicest motel now in the county because of Hurricane Irene. I had to tear everything out and re-gut it, and my wife has done a beautiful job redecorating, and it's worked. We got the Extreme Seal group staying there tonight. They just spent 200 hours on the water in Zodiacs and pulled in. They went to Coin Jock, fueled up at Coin Jock, and then they pulled into my place to eat at 5 o'clock just before I left. And they're doing that every month here. But that's the kind of things that we have to do. We have to be innovative to get businesses in or on the sound to us. I don't have the advantage of the canal and all the boats that go through that canal. And that's a big part of, Mr. Carl Davis taught me a long time ago, that was a big part of his business. And I used to get the business. Some of you board members remember Harrison's Marina across the way. Mr. Harrison used to bring in all the $1 million boats that came. He put them in an old, about a 67 Cadillac, and he drove them to Walnut Island. And they ate at Walnut Island because the Harrisons hated the Davises, which was crazy. Because Carl Davis and Lewis Davis have been 2 of my best friends. And it was just nuts. But things have changed, and things are going to continue to change. The county ordinance does not allow me, somebody asked the question, to have an off-premise sign. I can't have one. I have a commercial piece of property that I pay $610 a year for, that I zoned commercial back in the mid-'80s. Not when I was on the board, but after I got off the board the first time. and the property just sits there with pine trees on it. And when Mr. Miles was granted, thanks to this board, the permission to have a directional sign to help his business, I saw the opportunity for myself. And I saw the opportunity also for Pearls at Knott's Island, because they're in the same identical situation that I'm in. They're down the road, off the road, and people drive by that, and me included. I drive by too and forget that Pearl's there, and go on down the road and eat somewhere else. But the businesses that aren't on the road are the ones that need the help most. And so I don't have a problem with any of the other restaurants. I'm just out soliciting the board's help from everybody. I'm at a financial disadvantage when somebody down the road can have a sign. The sign at Currituck Marina, Lewis doesn't own that. He pays Ambrose Sign just like I pay Ambrose Sign $500 a month. I've got 4 of them. And of the signs that I've got, I rented 2 of them from county ladies. One of them a widow, right down the street here, the one you see right around the corner. Okay, I pay her every year. And so the money I generate from my restaurant, I turn back over to her. The other one I turn over to Karen Pierce because I've got one down there. But that's as close to Grandy as I can get. Our travel and tourism department, I want to tell you, is doing a super job. We have seen the biggest increase in our business directly due to that Welcome Center in Moyock. But when people pull in a van with a bunch of screaming kids that they've been listening to for 8 or 9 hours, and they grab a brochure either from Krabby's or Currituck Marina or Berry's or Walnut Island, and then they've got to travel 45 minutes and all of that traffic out there, and then what happens? They come into Grandy, and what do they see? They first of all run into 2 stoplights within 800 feet of each other. They run into a Sonic sign. They run into a McDonald's sign. They run into a Hardee's sign. They run into an Exxon sign. They run into a 7-Eleven sign. And God be with them if they see that little sign that says Walnut Island. And they forget that all of those billboard signs that I pay in excess of $2,000 a month for tells them to turn at the 7-Eleven in Grandy. They don't remember that. I wouldn't remember it either. But a directional sign on my property as you get into Grandy, it's at the end of my apartments. It's about a 2.5, 3-acre lot. And it's totally underutilized. Nothing but pine trees growing on it. Would serve that purpose to tell people, welcome to Grandy, turn left at the 7-Eleven store, welcome to Berry's. And that would be a great aid for me. I'm not going to go through the package because most of you know the problem with the planning board. I don't have a problem with the planning board. I don't think it's important for me to go back to the planning board, whether they approve or deny. You and I both, having been commissioners, know that they're simply an advisory board. That's all they're doing. You can take their advice, or you don't have to take their advice. They acted illegally. Their own procedures are dictated by the general statute, which is in the package that I gave you. They held my hearing with me not there. Okay, I was told to be there at 7:30. I called this office at 3 o'clock, was told to be here at 7:30. I walked in this door. I heard the meeting going on. I looked at the clock. It was 7:17. And when I sat down, after the meeting was over, Mr. Woody came over and advised me that the board had voted on my item 1219 or whatever it is, and had denied it. And I'm saying, why didn't they wait till put it at the end of the meeting, or it's supposed to be held over to the next meeting? And of course, he had no idea, because none of those 9 members on that board know what the procedure is, including the chairman. And I found that absurd, but they don't. You've got a copy of those rules and regulations, and that's all I'm going to say about that. That needs to be corrected. Somebody needs to educate them as to how to hold a meeting. The staff, as Mr. Woody said, denied both Mr. Miles' request and my request for the same reasons. And I expected that. When I went to Mr. Woody and I applied, he told me they would probably deny it. And so I expected it, and I agree with it. It's not, it is against the UDO. There's no getting around that. Why the planning board chose to vote for Mr. Miles 7-2 and vote against mine 0-9, I can't answer that. I don't think it's important. It's not important to me, because you are the judicial body. They are the quasi-judicial body. But you're the judicial body that can help a business out, whether it's Mr. Miles or Mr. Miles and Mr. Nelms or whoever. I would like if you would, if Debbie can put on the screen. The other thing I was astounded about was when I went to Peter Bishop And I asked Peter, I said, Peter, can you get me a map to show me where all of the businesses are on Currituck Sound? Because that's an issue for y'all. Y'all should have that. There is none. There was none. And so with the help of Harry and Peter and my own knowledge, I developed the map that you see up there now.
Yep.
If you look on that map, you'll see the green dots. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, there's 6 of them. It's all there. Those are all the businesses on all of Currituck Sound, from the North River all the way down to Point Harbor. The business you see is Krabby's, who you permitted to have a sign. Currituck Marina, who already has a designated sign on US 158, plus he has a sign on a boat when you turn the curve there, because he needs 2 signs. He's had it there forever, and I think it's a heck of a neat idea. And it helps his business out. I'm sure some people still drive by there. And then you have my place that has no sign. If you go all the way down to the point, that green dot there is the Laughing Gull, which has been out of business for a year and a half. You already passed Saul's Barbecue that's out of business. You already passed Pots On in the Kitchen that's been out of business. And then you go up to Corolla, and the only thing I could find up there, and correct me, Ben, if I'm wrong, is Mike and Diana's. That is regulated by a lot of regulations, and it's in the Timbuktu subdivision. Okay, he's also regulated by an association of all the owners of Timbuktu as to what he can and cannot do. And he is not actually on Currituck Sound. There's about 20 acres of marsh behind him. The only other business that's there is that little go-kart track. And that little go-kart track is on a pond where I used to trap mink. And that is not connected to Currituck Sound, so he's not on Currituck Sound either. The only business up there that everybody's concerned about Corolla, and I'm sure all the people at Corolla are listening to this and are concerned too because they think there's going to be a million signs up there, is the Inn at Corolla. That's the only viable business that's up there. And they're an inn. They don't even have a restaurant. Don and I went up there the other day to try to eat somewhere in Corolla. There wasn't a restaurant open all day up in Corolla, not one unless you want a slice of pizza. But the Inn at Corolla, and it's on NC-12, it's not off the highway. The last one is Pearl's, that I've gone to since I was probably about 16 years old. And Mr. Idlett knows real well, and most of you, I think, that lives here in the county a long time know where Pearl's is. A nice place. It's the same identical situation that Mr. Miles and Mr. Nelms is in. It's almost identically the same distance, about between a half and 3/4 of a mile off the main road to Knott's Island, tucked down there nowhere. And he had a sign, which I don't know if he got cited for. You might remember one time on the side of the building, on that barn building out there on the end of the road. He had a sign there for a while, and he was required to take it down. And he's struggling too. I know, I talk to him every year. He helps me with my charity events, and he's struggling too. And in closing, the other thing I will say is all I want is fairness. I mean, this board, you're a fair board, and I hope you're going to continue to be fair. I just want the same treatment, the same understanding for my business. I've had to lay off every part-time employee I have now. I have 10 left. 10 left. Of that 10, 9 are single mothers with children. And my wife and I are back working in there. I'm working 70 to 80 hours a week because I can't afford to put somebody else in there. Because the dinners dropped from 80 to 100 a night down to 20 a night or less. And we just had, I told Dan, we just had the Extreme SEAL group pulled in. And they spent their money here in Currituck. They're spending their money renting rooms from me tonight. They're spending money eating my good steaks tonight, which, by the way, are the best in North Carolina. And they fueled up at Currituck, though. So they stopped by Currituck Canal and they bought gas from Lewis at Currituck Marina. They're in a bunch of Zodiac boats. They've traveled 200 miles living in the Zodiac for 4 days. And once a month they come stay with us. But they spend their money not just with me, but with the businesses in Currituck Canal. And that's what I'm here championing today, is the small business guy, the 6 businesses that you see on that sign up there. And 4 of those 6 have already got signs. The only 2 that are left are Pearl's and my restaurant. The thing that I found outstanding about the planning board, and I didn't understand 2 things in their determination, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bid. One was saying they were worried about the new businesses. Oh my gosh, this would help new businesses that come into the county. Well, isn't that what you want to do? Why wouldn't you want to help somebody that's got a business down the road or around the bend, or like Paul said, if you're selling marbles, you want to put the marbles in front of the house, not in the back bedroom. Why wouldn't you want to do that? The other thing they said against me, that they voted against me for, was because it was in the public interest. And when you get a chance, go home and look up the term public interest. I'm sure Mr. Attorney has done that before a number of times, and it astonishes me. That is, it's used by lawyers, it's used by governments, it's used all over the place. And what does it mean? Well, to me, the public interest is me. I'm the public. I'm providing a service. It's the people that are traveling in a van. They got a bunch of kids and they want to come Friday night instead of checking in Saturday so they can avoid that traffic. So they come down and they stay at Barry's on Walnut Island. They spend the night. They have a good meal. They get up at 7 o'clock before the traffic gets crazy, and they get to their cottage. And it's the people that work for me, the single moms that work for me and their kids. Because if I close the doors, and I can close the doors, and it's the thoughts in my mind, we're going to lay off 10 things. Think about how many people in that 12 or 15 restaurants right now, how many families that you're taking care of on your social services. We knew the girl that ran Winged It, that went under. We did a benefit for her sister that died of cancer. Great kid. She put her total heart and 2 years of her life and lost everything she had in it. And the guy at Grimm's did the same thing. He closed it up and walked away and said, I won't be back. And there ain't many of us left. There's not many of us left. And I just want to stay. I love the business. I love the county. I love the politics. And I ask for your help. I know that you've got to do what Ike and Mr. Petrie and all the rest of you have said. You've got to change the ordinance somehow to accommodate everything and everybody and make sure we don't have a million signs out there. I don't want a million signs out there. Of the 4 billboard signs I have out there right now, 2 of them I pay to county residents. The other one goes to Ambrose Sign, who is our neighbor in Camden, and the 4th one goes to a national company that operates out of Elizabeth City. I try to keep everything I do in North Carolina and in Currituck County. Every one of my employees lives in Grandy. And like I said, those moms don't need to be without a job, because they're going to draw 13 weeks of unemployment, and then they're going to be on the social list. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions, Mr.
Yes.
Petrie?
Mr. Nelms, you said you had 3 businesses. You have the marina, the motel, and the restaurant.
Yes, sir.
So does that mean you'd qualify for three signs?
No, sir.
If we do what you say,
No, Mr. Miles had 2 businesses. Mr. Miles has a restaurant and a motel the same as I do.
I know, but my fear personally is Pandora's box, and I'm just saying, me personally, my other question is, where is the piece of property you've got now that's...
Let me ask Mr. Woody, doesn't your ordinance change, say, 1 sign and specify the size?
It
It
does.
says 1 directional sign.
One directional sign.
Is that per business?
per property?
There should be location.
Per property, exactly, Mr. O'Neill.
That's
It's
fine.
per property.
Where's your piece of property that you're talking about?
It's Lot 10 on Neals Creek Park.
So you're looking for a sign on Poplar Branch Road?
No, sir, it's not on Poplar Branch Road. If you knew where Neals Creek Park was, Mr. Petrie, you know it's on 158.
Okay, well, I don't know where it is.
I understand. There's a lot you don't know.
Well, okay.
Neals Creek Park is 10 lots, zoned agricultural, except for lot number 10, that is zoned commercial, was zoned commercial back in the 80s, 1986, I'm guessing. It's about a 2.4-acre commercial lot inside Grandy that sits there with nothing else except Mr. Woodhouse's lot where he runs his horse, next door to me.
So it's right on Highway 1.
Right on the highway in Grandy. I own it free and clear, and I qualify.
Well, I'm going to go back to my original motion. Mr. Nelms, you're right. There's a lot I don't know. And I'll admit that. That's why I would like to remand it back to the planning board and let me do a little research on it for me personally. You're right. There's a lot I don't know.
Well, I did my research, Mr. Petrie.
Do I have a second for that motion?
Well, if it's
Well, is this part of the public hearing now? I'm confused.
well, this
I think you got to close the public hearing first, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I would recommend to you that if Mr. Nelms has completed his presentation, that you ask if there's anyone else that wants to make any comments
point.
during the public
Okay.
hearing, then to close it before you all make any
All right,
determination.
okay, well, we'll disregard the motion at this point then, okay. I just want to make sure everybody had a chance to, because I was going to call for discussion. I'm not through either with that. We seem to be rushing the situation. Does anybody have any other questions for Mr. Nelms while he's up here? Okay, is anyone else here interested in addressing this particular situation tonight?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome, sir. Okay, not hearing anyone, then I'll close the public session, and then we'll entertain a motion, if you'd like to make the motion at this point.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I apologize for not following the procedure. I would like to remand this back to the planning board when the applicant uses terms like illegal and they don't know what they're doing. That gives me cause for concern that I think he needs to readdress it with them, because I don't want to have any loose ends out there, and I think the UDO is not going to start till January. It'll give us a chance to address this, and I totally agree with Mr. Nelms. I mean, businesses need to survive, and so I think it's something we'd like to look at and remand it to make my motion to go back to the planning board.
May I also include, I think Mr. Nelms made some good points here, and I think probably staff needs to look at it. And I think that Mr. Woody could look at that right there, because there were good points made there, and we definitely need to support all our businesses here in the county.
Well, what I'm hearing, I think, is exactly along the lines of what you're saying.
Right.
Is that, in essence, this really needs to go back to have this ordinance, as it stands, refined and defined more specifically.
Mr. Chairman,
because it's
point of
too
order,
open-ended.
we've not had a proper second to the motion to entertain
That's correct. I
discussion.
understand. That's why I asked for the second earlier, but discussion was continuing. I'm more interested in getting this
Second.
handled.
Now, Mr. Chairman, if this is going to be remanded back, what needs to happen is staff needs to take the lead on this so that we don't have two different ordinances. You need to make a comprehensive recommendation that addresses the concerns that Mr. Nelms has, as well as the ones along the intercoastal waterway, and come back with one piece of legislation that we can vote on that addresses from Knott's Island to Point Harbor. And if the Corolla issue is an issue that needs to be left out because of concerns that the folks in Corolla may have, then certainly that's how it should come back to the board, is comprehensive, and be done with it.
I concur with what Commissioner O'Neill said. Is it necessary for it to go back to the planning board, or is this something that can go to the staff and have them bring that recommendation back to us?
Even if the staff takes this and makes substantial changes to it, which I think we would, then it needs to go back to the planning board under that pretext too. So either way, it's going to have to go back to the planning board.
Mr.
Can
Chairman,
that be done by their next meeting so that we can give Mr. Nelms an opportunity to get this proceeding?
Yes.
Mr. Etheridge.
couple of questions. Why would they not reopen it that night when Mr. Nels walked in? If he was told at 7:30, to be there at 7:30, he gets there at 7:15 or 7:17. They've already continued it. Why didn't they go ahead and hear it that night again?
I don't know the answer to that.
This is for the attorney then.
Mr. Etheridge, the chairman did not even ask if the applicant was in the room. I listened to the tape of the disc 6 times. He opened the hearing and did not even ask if an applicant or an applicant's representative was in attendance. That's what the chairman did.
Agree. Being that there is a provision under rules procedure, if they didn't ask about the applicant being in the room or a representative, how could he determine to hear it?
Well, obviously, the planning board does have this rule that requires for the applicant to be in attendance, and if not, the rule goes on to say the case should be tabled until the next meeting, which apparently did not occur. Of course, it's a general rule of law in North Carolina that a board that has adopted policies or procedures is expected to comply and conform with those policies and procedures. And so that's another basis, I think, for this motion. Is certainly entirely appropriate to allow for the planning board to have another opportunity to act on this matter under its rules.
Anything else?
Is this going to cost Mr. Nelms additional funds, re-advertising, or anything like that?
I don't think that it should, no.
Any other comments?
Are planning board tape, are they video like us or just audio?
I don't know.
Audio.
With another comments, basically, I agree with Mr. O'Neill that the problem is not with the proposal that Mr. Nelms has made, the planning board's action notwithstanding. The ordinance has some flaws in it that need to be addressed, and I think those need to be addressed by planning staff. We need to fix this, and I'm all for accommodating the businesses here. If every business that would be affected by this suddenly got a sign on 158, 168, it's not going to make that much difference looking at what's out there now. I mean, I understand the intent of the UDO, policy that we're trying to follow, their CA5, but the simple fact of the matter is the businesses are not located on the highway need to make people aware of where they are located, and they need to have the ability to do that.
Mr. Chairman, can I make one more comment?
Certainly.
You just brought up a good point. I'd much rather see a directional sign for a Currituck County business than one being advertised out of another county.
Right, understand. So as I said, I think really the issue, and again, I'm going to ask Mr. Petrie because you're dead on with the intention of doing that, but it needs to go back to staff first and have staff come up with a rewrite of this ordinance recommendation, maybe accommodating what Mr. Nelms indicates that would be fair for these businesses, and then take that to the planning board along with his application, and see if we can get something resolved for that, because it's ridiculous the way this thing is structured now. We're favoring a certain group of businesses. Really, it's just one down there on the Intercoastal Waterway. When the ordinance is wide open, if everybody knew about this, they could all go out there and put signs on it because of the way it's structured.
Mr. Rorer, one of the things that I realize that one of the things that's lacking, I called the Chamber of Commerce, I went to Peter Bishop, and I went to Travel and Tourism.
Microphone.
I went to the Chamber of Commerce, I went to Peter Bishop, Economic Development Director, and I went to Travel and Tourism, looking for information that does not exist. And that is a tremendous void that I personally couldn't believe. But there is no, and the Chamber of Commerce person that talked to me said that the Chamber of Commerce had been trying to get this for a long time and didn't have it. But there is no map that shows businesses or that shows property that is zoned business for the whole county. There is none. The two maps that I gave you were produced at my request, and that's all that's been done. And so when you go to look for something for show me all the businesses on Currituck Sound, it's sure within your capabilities. Harry is one of the best people in the world to do a map for you, but the information is not there for Harry to produce that map, and that's something I think that y'all should need in your deliberations. It's much better to have something visual than to have something just in verbiage. And when I looked at that and I saw those 6 dots, well, that was the reason I brought it to you. I said, that's outstanding. You could actually have more businesses on Currituck Sound and Currituck Canal than you could in all of Currituck Sound. You could rezone every piece of property in there commercial, and you could have 100 businesses all along that canal. And if you were in Florida, that's probably exactly what you'd have. But there is a void there, and that's something I think would help everybody in economic development and whoever, Ben's office, and you as a Board of Commissioners also.
Well, we've recognized for quite some time that one of the failings we have here, shortcomings, is the fact we have no business registration requirement. The Chamber of Commerce, nor the Economic Development Director, nor really anybody in the government has actually any idea of who's operating what kind of business here. But the people operating the business has been very loath to offer that information to the county. The simple reason for the requirement in most other areas is because of zoning compliance requirements.
Or tax.
And for tax too, but the fees that usually are incurred by that, which are minimal, for instance, in Towns and Dare County, it's $25 to $35, and that's really just the administrative cost of having somebody look at what you want to do, where you want to do it, and making sure that's okay with the zoning plan. And then after that, if there's a tax, usually it's a tax on business assets included in there, but there are a lot of things that are excluded from that as well, so it doesn't really seem to be a substantial amount. But that's the reason people resist it. But it's a hindrance to the businesses in Currituck County, because if somebody wants to come here and bring a service that would help those businesses or compete with them, they're not going to know. They could come here blindly and open a shop that's competing with 6 others, not knowing that we already have a surplus of that, when in fact they could probably bring a business here that would actually be complementary to those, and just don't know that because we don't know who's doing what here.
Yeah, the chamber said that they thought that if we had a business permit, that would, that would at least identify the businesses. I don't know whether that's that.
Only those of us
that
who are
we
not
can't
running
do
for
it.
election this year would dare mention that, though.
I know, but you look at the south end of the county, and now every strip mall from the Coin Jock Bridge to the Wright Memorial Bridge is vacant.
Yes.
Every single one. And
Yeah,
that's probably about 1,200 people in the lower end of Currituck County that are out of business.
That huge building there where the foreclosure furniture was, they're over on Dare County, on the bypass.
That, if you remember, included Old Tom's Restaurant.
Restaurant, yeah.
They're gone. The doggy grooming place is gone. It's all gone to the dogs. Okay, thank you.
Could I say one thing, Mr. Nelms?
Yes, sir, Mr. Martin.
The Tulls Creek Marina,
Yes, sir.
they have a little carry-out right there as well as a boat ramp. That's another business that's on our waterway.
Which one?
It's at Tulls Creek, right at the end of the
Toll's old
bridge.
place.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's right there, and that's one business that you missed on that.
Yep. Well, I thought about that, but I didn't know if he was back in business, because the last time I went by there, they were out of business.
He's a,
Is it his son?
it's just a little carry-out that's right there, and they charge you, I guess, for launching your boats back and forth.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because what I would ask, and if Mr. Petrie would be perhaps amenable to amending your motion to, in essence, send this back to staff for a recommendation, which can then be taken to the planning board and reheard based on Mr.
I'll amend my motion to send this particular matter back to staff and then readdress it. I want to make sure that Mr. Nelms is treated fairly. I'm not anti-business, but I want to make sure that we cover it this time, because last time we didn't.
No.
And it was predicted and came to fruition. And so I want to make sure that Mr. Nelms, Mr. Miles, and everybody else is treated fairly. So I'll amend my motion to send this particular matter back to staff to readdress it and then go back before the planning board and make sure that Mr. Nelms is treated fairly. And Mr. Woody, I would like for Mr. Scanlon, if you could find out who's the chairman of the planning board.
Go back, Joe.
Could we get some feedback from him on why this was handled the way it is? Because if I were in me sitting here, I'm embarrassed if what Mr. Nelms is true, and I have no reason to doubt what he's saying. To me, this was not handled right, and this is not the way that we operate. So if we could get a report back to this board to find out how, what, when, and where, I think that would be appropriate, and then get back to Mr. Nelms and tell him exactly what happened. Is that something we can do, Mr. Scanlon?
Yes, sir, we can.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I have a motion, an amended motion. I have a second for that motion.
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Item B, public hearing in action, PB 12-18, Currituck County Unified Development Ordinance Administrative Manual. Request to approve the administrative manual for the new Unified Development Ordinance. Mr. Woody.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an administrative manual. We actually have one of these now. We call it the Development Review Process Manual. I'll be real quickly, because this is a manual that goes along with our new UDO, but this does not include regulatory information. It's not a set of rules or standards. When we adopted the UDO, that becomes effective January 1st, 2013. UDO has a number of permits you have to get, like a sign permit, for example, or building permit, or site plan approval, whatever it is, there's permits. And what the staff does is instead of putting all the procedures in the ordinance, you put it in a separate kind of standalone document. And what we've done is we've actually taken an application, for example, for a site plan. And within that site plan application, we have a list of what you have to fill out and provide to the county. We have a checklist, the things that the staff is going to look at when they review your site plan, so you could, in theory, can know that when you submit. Any details related to landscape installation, submittal dates, fee schedule, all this stuff is administrative things that we compile in this one document. So the theory is that if you're going to do business in Currituck County, instead of having to go to multiple places or different documents or different parts of the ordinance, you can pull an application out of this manual here and you can see exactly the steps you have to take to get through whatever process it is. Sometimes those processes are really short. You come in, 2 hours later, you got a building permit, off you go. Sometimes you got to come to this board and it takes 2 or 3 months to get here. So the manual is just a collection of all the administrative things that accompany the UDO. We put it together in one booklet, one manual, and ask you to adopt it so it has some formal recognition to it. And that's what this is tonight. Again, it's a compilation of applications, procedures, fee schedule, things, all the administrative stuff that goes along with what we do. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on this. I can if you need me to. The information has been available online. If you feel like there's something you ever need to change, you have the right to change this document. It's not a UDO. And that's actually one more advantage, and I'll quit, is when you want to change a word in the UDO, it takes us 3 months to do that because it's got to go through staff, through planning board, back to you. This isn't an ordinance, so if you want to change an application requirement, you can do that. You don't have to go through that formal process. I'm happy to answer any questions you have on this, and obviously we'd recommend approval of it. And the planning board heard this as well, and they also recommended approval.
Any questions from Mr. Woody?
Me personally would like to see this manual before I vote to approve it. If I could get a copy of it.
We can, and that's fine. Like I said, we have it available online, and we can share it digitally. We can bring paper copies. Either way is fine. We don't.
I'm old fashioned.
Okay.
I want to read it.
Okay.
I want it in paper form so that I can touch it and feel it and squeeze it.
We can do that.
Is this something we can print out and put it in our mail slot, and we can pick it up, when we're in?
Yes.
And that way, our next meeting, we can do something.
That's fine.
Yeah, and I'm fine with the adoption of it. I just would like to read through it before I vote on it, and then if there's a question, somebody could say, "Oh, you didn't read it."
I understand. And the planning board took an extra month to go through it too. So we tried to bring it early, so we had time to get it done before January 1st.
I'm sure it's
that's
proper,
fine.
but I just would like to put my eyes on it before I vote on it.
How many pages is it?
Probably 100 and something.
How many is UDO?
Send it by email.
400 and something, yeah.
Electronic.
Again, sound like the IRS here, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, but remember, it is. But all it is just a compilation of applications, and most people usually to get an application, you go to the website and just download the application. So it's long, but with each application, if I'm doing a site plan, I can see, it has a lot of duplicative information because each application includes, like, these are all the steps you do. Then we repeat those steps in the next application. So in theory, if you're coming to do business in Currituck County, you can have one handout that has all you need in it and not have to flip around.
Well, I wasn't really criticizing the amount of pages in there. I was just saying I'd prefer that you just send me a PDF on it and I'll read it on the computer rather than killing all those trees.
Either way, it's fine.
Okay.
You slaughter a couple trees for me.
Okay.
Any other
Please.
questions from Mr. Woody? Okay, what's the pleasure of the board? Well, I guess with this public hearing too, so I need to open the public hearing. Does anybody like to address this matter? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing.
I'd like to motion that we continue this to at least the next commissioners meeting.
Second that motion.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Item C, consideration action PB 07-39 Nicholson's Point, Plan Unit Development, request for preliminary plat special use permit extension for 140 residential units in Maple Crawford Township. And I assume
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
is this like the other 2 or 3 cases we've heard? And I thought the last time we passed it and said, can we take care of this administratively? I'm going to make a motion, we grant the extension, and any future ones that come forward, instead of coming before the board, if it can be administratively approved, do so.
Now, the UDO requires that this board consider
That's
whether
fine.
to extend
Okay, I understand.
the permit.
Second his motion for approval.
Any discussion?
I'm not faulting anybody, just asked a question.
I understand.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Consent agenda.
Move for approval.
And we had one item added to that, which you remember.
Mr. Chairman, I had a question on that before well, there's a motion now, so I guess I can't.
Go ahead.
I would just like the county manager to go into detail on item number 2, the change order for the decrease in the amount of the Maple Commerce Park. Normally, we have things in our consent agenda asking for more money, and this is a decrease, so I'd like for him to elaborate a little bit on that.
Yes, ma'am. You have a change order request. This is part of the closeout for the wastewater treatment plant that's at Maple, which is the plant that is serving the YMCA, the Cooperative Extension, and the Commerce Park. In the original bid, original design, there was funds put in there in anticipating how much undercutting would need to be done to the project, to the infiltration ponds, to the building, et cetera. And when the project was all said and done, it was not as much required as what was originally put into the contract. So we're getting a money back on the contract, and a little over $61,000.
Thank you. Normally, it's the worst scenario, so
Yeah, don't expect that
we
to
don't
happen
expect
again.
that to happen. So I just wanted some
Pleasant
clarification
surprise.
so that the public understood that also.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Commissioners report. Start with Mr. Petrie tonight.
I strongly encourage everybody to get out and vote. It's our right as citizens of the greatest country in the world, and we need to exercise our right to get out and vote, and that's all. Thank you.
In line with that, I think early voting starts the October the 18th.
That is Thursday.
Right, through November 1st, I believe it is.
Yes,
Half day on that Saturday. So you can also register and vote at the same time. If you did not make the registration deadline of the 12th, that's okay. You can just bring some proof of residency with you when you go. Ms. Gilbert.
Couple things. The Moyoc site, the small area plan, the surveys are now in and available online. I don't know if Mr. Woody wants to add anything to that other than they are available for viewing now, and we will have a public meeting scheduled for mid-November that has not come out yet, but when the works with that, correct?
Yeah, there's a robust amount of information on our website. If you go to Currituck County and just search Moyoc Small Area Plan, you'll see that a lot of information about the planning process. And right now, staff is developing a public participation plan that we'll have to you hopefully very soon, after which we can start to schedule some additional meetings and give folks a chance to give input.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
The other things, on my way here tonight, and I apologize for this, but the Currituck House this Saturday from 9 until 2 is having a fall ball, which includes lots of activities. So I encourage you to participate in the fall ball at the Currituck House. The other item is the Currituck Kids is holding a fundraiser on November 3rd. This is at the Weeping Radish. Tickets are available, $40 single, $75 for a couple. This is an adult-only event. You must be 21 or over to attend. And you can purchase tickets at the Currituck Sheriff's Office, the Department of Social Services, Chamber of Commerce, the Weeping Radish, and any of our board members from the Currituck Kids. This is a great opportunity for the adults just to get out and have some fun, and all of the proceeds from this event does go to the Currituck Kids. Mr. Chairman, that's all I have.
Mr. Martin.
Yes, as we have on Sunday on Bells Island's Property Owners Association Clubhouse, a meet and greet our local political candidates. It's from 1:30 to 3 o'clock, and it is sponsored by our Property Owners Association as well as the Shawboro Ruritan Club, and there will be refreshments there, so come out and speak to your candidates.
Mr. Etheridge.
Yes, sir. Mr. Scanlon, do we have a representative going to the rate hearing on homeowners insurance on Wednesday?
We specifically don't, although Peter Bishop, the Economic Development Director, is going to be up there and has offered now to go and speak if the board would like for him to speak against that.
I think it's very important because for the public, the North Carolina Rate Bureau has had another application filed for homeowners insurance with a 30% increase on Currituck County and the coastal counties. It jumps right now, and this is on $75,000 of homeowners insurance. The current premium that was granted in 2009 is $1,379. Now, the filed request is $1,773. The same house in Mecklenburg County, let me see if I can find it again, only went up like $20 or the same amount of coverage from $530 something to $554. So I think it's important that we're up there. 324, I'm sorry, 324 to 354. That was in Mecklenburg County. And 30% again, they're hitting us. And where are the claims? They're west of 95. And I think it's important that Mr. Bishop make some remarks there, and I urge the general public to make their comments known also to the North Carolina Insurance Commissioner's office. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. O'Neill.
Well, I was going to talk about the same thing Mr. Etheridge is talking about. They're accepting public comments between now and October 19th, written public comments. I spoke with Mr. Bass with the Chamber and Mr. Bishop today. I think they were going to put a link on our website. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
There will be a link to our website where you can go, and you'll have website to the Department of Insurance website. It'll tell you where you can send written comments. And in 2008, they asked for 19% statewide, and they got 4.05, and we think, wow, we won. That was the average statewide. Charlotte-Mecklenburg got a decrease in their rates, where there's more damage to hurricanes west of here than it is here. So we got, I forgot what our percent increase was 11 or 12%? 14%. So I'm telling our folks at home, if you don't go to this website and you don't submit your comments, we're going to get socked with another huge rate increase. And I'm telling you, it's getting to the point now where the insurance rates are equivalent to some people's mortgages. It's just unbelievable. So that information's on the website.
Mr. Rorer, if I may, I'll throw out one more figure. Greensboro and Winston-Salem currently has a rate of $365 for $75,000 worth of coverage. The filed rate is $369, $4 more. But yet, we're being asked to cough up over $400 more.
Because the computer model says that we're...
That's correct.
Exactly right.
It's not experience, it's the model.
Okay. I just have a few comments tonight, too. Mr. Etheridge and I both have on our pink shirts tonight. October still is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Assume that's why we're wearing those.
Yes, sir.
And I did want to make mention of this past week. The Chamber had its awards luncheon over at the Cooperative Extension. And we had some really outstanding performances this past year by people both in the tourism industry and in the local businesses. Mr. Martin's daughter-in-law, Gina Martin, Platinum Party Planning, won the Business of the Year for small businesses under 10 people, and Rick Brown of Wild Horse Adventure Tours company, he won the award for employer over 10 people. And then Currituck Kids, the charity that Marion was talking about, on which board she and I both serve, was Nonprofit of the Year. And then I want to make one note for everybody, noticing that those of us in pink shirts also are not wearing neckties, that this Thursday, October 18th, I learned today, is International Necktie Day. And if you'd like to do like I did and go to Wikipedia and look up the history and origin of neckties, you'll find some interesting facts about it. The most interesting one I have found is they're becoming banned in more and more places. The United Kingdom hospitals have banned neckties because they are the most infectious piece of wearing apparel, since they are often the least cleaned pieces of wearing apparel. So you go to the hospital in the UK, you better not wear your tie, they'll make you take it off. And there are other reasons for not wearing them. Public safety officers usually, if they wear one, have to wear a clip-on, so the thugs are perps that they're apprehending can't grab them by the tie and use it as a leash and choke them with them. There's even a thing kind of like wedgies where people are, it's called peanutting, where they grab somebody's tie and ram it up like that and cause a lot of damage. So you guys with this tie fetish might consider that sometime. Anyway, that's all I have for tonight.
As a follow-up to the Moyock small area thing, have you started contacting any of the people that showed an interest to being on the committee?
We have not. We'd like to present that list to the board for consideration first.
Okay.
Mr. Scanlon, anything tonight?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
You sure? All right.
Make a motion for adjournment.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for coming. Drive safe.